Hi everyone, this is Earth 2 Comic Cast. My name is Aquila. Obviously, you will notice my Mo is not doing this. He is currently out for the day, so I am going to be running the interview for doing the Comic Cast first. Like always, we have for this month we have Brianna with us doing the helping us out. Say hi, Brianna.
Hi.
And our guest this week is Hannibal Tabu.
Yes, sir.
He has done some work. He's worked with Robert Roach on Menthu, which we interviewed earlier this week, and he's done various different comics. Let him do his introduction. So, for the viewers, give a little bit about yourself.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Oh,
You cut
sorry
out
about
on
that.
me at the end.
Oh, yeah, it's all good. Just for the viewers, if you want to do a little introduction of yourself to the listeners, just tell us who Hannibal is and what you've been working on.
No problem. My name is Hannibal Tabu. I'm the 2012 Top Cow Talent Hunt winner. I also write a weekly comic book review column at Comic Book Resources called The Buy Pile. I've written four Aspen Universe source books for Aspen Comics. I've written prose fantasy for Stranger Comics around their Niobe book. I've written, oh gosh, what else? Like I said, with the Top Cow book, I wrote Artifacts number 35. I'm currently working on two miniseries for Wonderman Comics, which is Scoundrel and Irrational Numbers, both historical fiction works. And I do a weekly webcomic on the Operative Network, operative.net, called Project Wildfire Street Justice. And as he mentioned, I just released with Robert Roach Menthu, The Anger of Angels, which is a 80-page, $10 book that you can get online. And the big boy won't give you a deal like that. Which is three issues of superhero action smashing up the city of Los Angeles between an angel, a demon, and an ancient Egyptian demigod.
That is some epic stuff. Some good. That a very talented man, as you guys can see. Like going through
You're very kind.
so many different works, so many amazing things. So we're happy to have you, and we're yeah, just thanks for being here. So
Happy
just
to do
going
it.
into it is so we'll first go through our this week in comics. Since this episode's not too long ago, sadly, I have no too much recommendations. Kind of like covered everything last Thursday, and we haven't had some new
Mm.
comics this week. But I'll just go into just to kind of show Hannibal just kind of how it's done. I'll just go through my normal like my recommendations of just stuff I've been reading. God Complex for people who haven't been reading that one. I think I've talked about it a few times. It's one I would recommend. It's an image comic. Basically, it's kind of a nice mix of cyberpunk meets the Greek gods. Such an
Hmm.
interesting story. That I highly recommend that one. I'm going blank on the name of the writer, but definitely recommend that one. Basically, the main character is an investigator who gets pulled in by these rulers who are these god. They have the names of Greek gods. That basically he is supposed to be investigating.
That Top Cow book. I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know about it. Okay, so he see this guy knows his stuff. um, basically, it's a story where the main character is basically pulled in by the gods who rule this world as these rulers, but they have control of the data network that like everyone uses, and through it they kind of control the world. And but there's been a murder, and the main character is kind of pulled in by these gods to find out what's happening, and it creates this unique dynamic between another separate kind of church that kind of wants to keep people away from technology, believes it's gone too far, and then a whole another resistance group that just not necessarily is against technology, but against what these like gods represent, these rulers. Um, highly recommend that one again. Some other stuff I've been reading is Doctor Strange. I've been really liking Donny Cates' works. Been really enjoying him. His this last 2 years has been like kind of like the rise of him, and it's cool really to see
Hmm.
how he's going, and he's doing really well. Um, yeah, Doc Strange. Going off that, another one I would recommend is if you want to try something new that's short for people out there, God not God Complex, God Country that he wrote last year is
Hmm.
another really good one. Basically, this kind of omnipresent, like super powerful sword falls in the heart of Texas, and it falls into the hands of a grandfather who has dementia, and basically it leads to this interesting story that we can always like we all relate between family and how, especially if you have like someone who has dementia, you love the person, but it's kind of like it creates a such a pain that like you're seeing this person lose themselves and not be able to recognize you and the family and the people around you. So, and to see how far a man would go to like keep that, and when he
Mm.
realizes that he's lost that ability, how far you keep that. So those are ones to recommend. There's plenty more, but I don't want this to go super long. I don't want to keep a rant. I'll let Hannibal. I know he wants to do have some recommendations, so I'll let him take over.
All right. Well, last week I recommended the Black Panther Annual, which was a very smart move for Marvel to have that ready after the very remarkable success of the movie. It featured stories from three very well-regarded Black Panther writers: Don McGregor from the Jungle Action era, Reginald Hudlin, and of course Christopher Priest, who brought us
Hmm.
many of the wonders to the Black Panther that we currently have.
So
That
many.
was a really good read. I also enjoyed Dr. Afra, number 17, the Star Wars book. They had less of my favorite character, which is this evil droid named Triple Zero, but the lead character, she really stepped into it and worked around some of the challenges that were presented and presented a really engaging book there. I had a lot of fun with that as well. Luke Cage had its last issue because it recently got canceled. And it was just Luke Cage telling his daughter a story, but it was so dramatic and so action packed and so funny and so fun and engaging that I really had a blast with that. Those are three books that I really enjoyed in the last week. And I know I would be remiss if I did not give my regular plug to Transformers More Than Meets the Eye, written by James Roberts, which is some of the best science fiction and character work on the market today.
That's some awesome stuff, man. Yeah, that's some great stuff. Again, those things, those recommendations and everything, I think Mo will also drop in as like on write up. So definitely take a look at all those things. This guy knows his stuff, so when he says it's good, it's good. So trust him. So
I
just
do what
go.
I can. Thank you.
Yeah, no, there's stuff that even you let me enlighten me to. I'm gotta get track on Transformers now. Gotta definitely take a look at that one. So going from there, we'll guess we'll go into the interview so yeah, just to start off, just when did you first decide you want to become like a write just to create your own comics and get in a comic book career?
I really got the idea to write comics when I was working at a website called Next Planet Over around the year 99 or 2000, if memory serves. And we had hired an editor to work with us whose name was Eric Stevenson, who now is a big muckamuck over at Image Comics. And Eric, who had seen me doing entertainment reviews, who'd seen I was writing novels, had seen us, like, I mean, I write all kinds of things. I never thought about one specific thing that wasn't another thing.
Hmm.
And he really had a big influence on my career, steering me in this direction. He introduced me to Jonah Weiland and comic book resources. Ultimately, my first book on the Top Cow Talent Hunt came out under the Image banner. So I always give a lot of respect to Eric for having a big influence on my career.
Oh, that's awesome.
Who has been the biggest influence on you outside the comics industry, and how did they affect your life?
Oh, that is a good but easy question. That would be probably George Lucas. There are a few entertainment properties that have affected and insinuated their way into my life as effectively and as thoroughly as Star Wars that my kids are so sick of hearing "do or do not." There is no try whenever I ask them to do something.
I love that one. I love that one
The
so much.
the
It's so applicable to life.
thousands of times I've quoted things at them, and even more recently, telling them this is not going to go the way you think, and them just really rolling their eyes at me and saying, "Oh, here he goes again with that." So yeah, George Lucas's work and his vision of an entire galaxy of wonder and possibility definitely plays a big role in my life and has loomed over my life since sitting in the theater in 1977.
Awesome stuff. Now, it's specifically have you just going off that is who do you think has been the biggest influence on your like comic book career, like someone you've worked with or gave you advice or kind of helped you kind of like develop your work?
The biggest influence in terms of that would definitely be Christopher Priest. And while, like I said, I really want to give a lot of credit to like Vince Hernandez at Aspen Comics or Matt Hawkins at Top Cow, who were enormously influential in my career and its development. Christopher Priest was the first person who really sat down with me and talked to me about the comics themselves, the making, the how to make the donuts, as the commercial used to say. And he talked a lot about you have to understand there's a difference between art for commerce sake and art for art's sake. Art for art's sake, you can take as long as you want. There are no deadlines. You do whatever you need to do. Art for commerce sake, you've got to get that freaking book out the door.
Yeah.
You've got to get stuff done because there's another
Timeline.
book coming right behind it. And you frittering around on a plot does not help anybody in the production line or the people waiting for the book. So I had to kind of get my head around that kind of a perspective because I'd been really of a kind of an auteur prior to that. But yeah, Christopher Priest's example and his example, I mean, he was one of the first black editors in comics. He was one of the first black writers in comics. And I've followed his example in many ways in that regard.
That's awesome. Paved the way for you, and you're keeping it going. That's it's always awesome to see.
Yes, sir.
What do you do to recharge your creative batteries?
I don't remember the last time I didn't have 7 or 8 projects on my Scrivener app on my iPad ready to go. And I was like, oh, I need to switch to this one now. Okay, time to do that one. But when I finish something, when I hit send, I stop and I meditate and I breathe and I listen to music. I watch a lot of television. I really enjoy a lot of television. Brooklyn Nine-Nine, The Flash. I'm about to start Altered Carbon on the recommendation of one of my friends. So I like to immerse myself in stories. It's really where I live and where I want to be most of the time. I also spend a lot of time with my kids. I love hanging out with my kids. They're both very unique and entertaining energies in and of themselves. My wife and I spend a lot of time together, and just overall, I try to focus on the things where I get the stories from. I remember watching the documentary, The Show, where Curtis Blow talked about MCs used to work a job all week and then go to the club on Friday night to rhyme and have something to talk about because they'd lived a life.
Mm-hmm.
And I do a lot of the same thing. I'm living a life, and a lot of that incorporates itself into the work that I ultimately end up doing.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. Going like just to take into like all that. When you go into writing, like, what is your typical? Well, not even just writing. Whenever you're working on something, what is your typical work routine? Like, kind of, how do you go through it? Like, just to give us kind of idea.
When I approach a project, the first thing I want to do is I want to get a real clear understanding of the characters. I grew up reading Who's Who in the DC Universe and the official handbook of the Marvel Universe with rapt attention because I was really interested in understanding who are these people, where they come from, what's their story that may not even be on the page. So when I write, I start by if there's already reference, I devour it, and if there's not, I need to write up a character sheet like that. I have a standard template that I use that has about 21 different fields from the basics like height and weight down to specific characteristics, special abilities, birth date if they're from Earth, informing both their Chinese and Western astrology, and look at the way that would inform the character. So I want to be able to know what their favorite song is. I want to be able to know a lot of details about the character before I start doing anything. Then after I do all that character work, and on an average book that'll be 9 or 10 characters I need to go through, given supporting characters and antagonists.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'll outline relentlessly down to almost okay. This is 5 panels. This is 1 page. This is page number such and such, and I'll do that so I can have an idea. I lay it out as a map of where I'm going. So I understand that if I need to stop or if I need to go shop at Ralph's for something, that I'll be ready to pick it up the next time I come to it. Then after that, I do scripting. And as in the same way that I said the outline is the map, the script is the territory. It's the actual where things happen. And surprises happen as I'm there. I lay out the script that way. I normally go through multiple drafts of the outline. So by the time I get through that, the scripting is pretty tight. If I get the time, I'll go through 2 or 3 drafts of the script before I send it off to the editors, and or in the indie cases before I send it off to the artist, and just cross my fingers that spell check caught everything that I needed it to catch.
That's some awesome stuff. You have such a awesome and detailed and like planned out routine.
It's very thorough.
It's very admirable, especially coming from like my work. Like whenever I try to do anything, it's always just disorganized and chaos. And I'm like, I should do stuff like that, plan it out.
I have to do it because I can only work in increments sometimes. Like some days I'll only get like 10 minutes to work on something. Today I was only able to fill in 2 plot items on an outline for this new ongoing that I'm going to be doing that I'm not supposed to talk about yet. But
All right, we won't push for more. We'll
uh,
just know there's something coming, guys. So get ready.
yeah. But I have to take all these notes and have all these outlines. So when I come back to it, I'm like, what the heck was I doing? Oh, right. Past me took care of that. So current me can just do the work and not have to refigure out where I was supposed to be going.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So, what tools do you use to create comics, and what makes them the right tools for you?
I use two tools in specific, which are my favorites. On my iPad, most of my work now is done on my iPad because I don't have time to sit down at a laptop like I used to. As I said, I've got a lot of time with my kids, a lot of time with my wife, and a day job as well. So I use an app called Scrivener, and Scrivener is fantastic for 2 reasons. One, it gives you the ability to use these kind of index cards, and you can arrange them on a digital corkboard that remembers where you are. So if I come back to it, it'll remember. Oh, you moved this here, and I can oh, I don't like that there. I can move the scene around, so on and so forth. The second benefit to Scrivener that I really like is, well, one of the many is that it synchronizes everything I do through Dropbox. So if I start working on something on my computer at home, I save it on Scrivener. It saves it to Dropbox. When I open up my iPad, it says, "Do you want to open the latest version, or do you want to start working?" I'm like, "No, sync it now, sync it now." And it brings down whatever is the latest thing. I work on that. It goes back up. So wherever I go, I can get the latest thing that I'm working on. I never have to lose my place, which again is a big consideration for me. So that's one of the major tools I use. As well, the other one that I use is an app called Textastic on iOS, which is a pure text-based program. When I'm translating different things, especially character profiles or promotional pages to HTML, I use that. But I also do a lot of writing there. Like all my comic book reviews are written in Textastic because it has an even more expanded extra row of keys. So normally on iOS or Android even, you have to do something to get to shift to get to say an apostrophe or a quotation mark. There's an extra row of things along the top of there, so I can just swipe to those much more quickly, and it is much more productive for me. As well as it offers an on-screen little arrow thing, so I can move around a cursor, so I can move the cursor much more like a computer. Using these tools has drastically increased my productivity and has allowed me to maintain synchronicity with my work wherever I go. Because even on Textastic, I can use a technology called WebDAV to just browse the files on there as though they were on my computer, and I can transfer them back and forth. I can copy and paste from them, and I use those to maintain most of the work itself. I also live, and I have to live inside a Google Calendar because my wife and my kids and all their activities are on it. So I'm like, okay, so I've got this much time this day. Okay, great. Then I can block that out for outlining. I can do this, that. And that helps me stay on track with also, oh, there's a deadline coming up. Oh, right. I have to get the script to that guy at such and such in time to do this. Or, oh, this artist, she needs to get this before I do this other thing. So I got to work on that in that order. So using the technology and the tools available to me has really helped me maintain my productivity.
That's awesome. So like I said, you have it so planned out and so organized. It's like this is the stuff that if you are, for people out there, if you're trying to do like your comic stuff, writing artists, this is the example. Follow this guy. This is the guy who's doing it right. In going on just going on to all the stuff that you do, like what element of your work that you like gives you the most personal satisfaction?
There are many elements of my work that I really enjoy, but the most personal thing, because it's a really private moment, is when I'm writing a story and I really understand the characters, that I'm outlining something and I don't have to think about, oh, what comes next, because the characters, I know them so well, I know exactly what they would do, and I know exactly how that would lead to the next thing that happens. So it's less like I'm writing something and more like I'm connected as part of a circuit, and there's energy flowing through me and it's just coming out. It's just going. So that's a very it's I've never surfed, but I have to imagine it's like surfing because it's like riding a wave of something, and just feeling it go through me. And when I get done with it and I look at it, I'm like, this is exactly what I want. This is exactly what I want. That's a really good feeling to me. Even though I understand that the collaborative art may mean that there'll be edits coming down the line from somebody else, I respect and understand that. But I normally get about 85% of the way if I feel that way. There's going to be very few notes that are going to come back.
Wow. So, what has been the most rewarding project in your professional career, in or out of comics, and why?
The most rewarding project in comics, I always say, is the next one. Because I always like to look forward and not back. But if I had to pick something, I've been able to have the largest impact on Project Wildfire. I've almost scooted out of the way, sorry. I've been able to really affect the story and plan it out, whereas before my co-creator Quinn McGowan, he had a vague idea of what he was doing and some of the pieces, but together we've been able to build a real story with a beginning, middle, and a definite end. Both of us know the last page and the last panel of Project Wildfire today. We're just trying to get to it because there's so many pages before then. um, so I've been able to have the greatest impact on that, and that's very satisfying because I know when I'm wearing the shirt with Project Wildfire on it, the way that like kids will run into me and they'll look at it, they're like, "Oh, what's that?" And they'll be like, "Oh my God, it's a hero, and he looks like me, and he looks like he can kick somebody's butt, and so on and so forth." So that's a very rewarding thing for me to have, as well as honestly, I like knocking down buildings, and I get the opportunity to do that a lot when I'm scripting. So like a lot of people have even asked me, like, "Do you not like LA because you've destroyed pretty much half of the city in several of the books that you've done?" I'm like, maybe it had it coming. LA knows what it did, so.
That's awesome.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't finish the question. And out of comics, of course, the answer would be my family because I grew up next to a foster home. Next door to my house in Memphis, there was a foster home, and there was a lot of kids who would come in and out, and I would get these little temporary friends. They wouldn't be around for long because they would move around the system. And to provide that kind of stability, to provide that kind of peace, especially with personalities that are as bright and as engaging and as funny as my family are, is the most rewarding possible thing to me outside of comics.
Awesome. Just like we already talked about a little bit before, and I was pointing out, but for like people who are with all this new people talent, there's plenty of talent, new people trying to get into comics or just trying to get into writing in general or like artistry, anything. What would you like kind of advice you would give them, like if they're trying to do their first project or get their start?
All right. I'll start by telling a story with this. My first idea for something that I was going to do was going to be the 60-issue magnum opus of a superpowered guy who had all these stuff going on, and it was completely the wrong way to go. It was not what I was supposed to be doing. And sorry, that's weird. The camera turned off for low power mode. Let me fix that. Anyway, but the first thing that you're going to do is not going to be the best thing you're going to do, and that's hard for a lot of people to accept. Malcolm Gladwell says it takes 10,000 hours to master anything. So if they're going to work on something, they should start small and finish it. Because the more things you finish, the better you can get, and the more effective you ultimately can be as a creator. So I tell people, work on what you can, finish it if you can, and get as much of it done as possible. And in doing so, then you'll start to see improvements. You'll start to see, oh, I was able to work on this, and I see the flaws in that work, and I'm better this time, and I can do better this time, and so on and so forth. And those sorts of things really help people develop as a creative, be it writing, be it art, whatever they're going to do. They need to continue to develop their craft. Because if they don't, there's somebody hungrier and younger right behind them, ready to take on the work. And that person is definitely not going to be slacking off and forgetting that lesson.
So, I think this is the last question, unless Ziggy has one. But
I do have two more.
Okay, well then it's the third to last question. What's the most important big idea that you've learned in life, in or out of comics, and why is it important?
That is a good question. The most important big idea Oh, okay. Then that would have to. I went to high school with this guy, one of my best friends, and he was a truly ridiculous human being. He had a rat tail. I mean, he was just a really ridiculous human being. But he once said something to me that really has carried true through everything I've done. He says, anything in life that you want, if you're willing to work hard enough for it and pay the cost, you can have it. Anything. And I had really thought about that. And the only things that I think that I want that I can't have, like say for instance, world domination, are too much. They're too much work based on the time that I have and the energy that I have available. I would have to sacrifice too many other things in order to do that. So I really uh, I really learned the value of work very early. From I grew up with my great aunt and uncle, and they gave me a really great example of that. I've watched the work ethic of a lot of other people who've succeeded. Christopher Priest, as I said, Eric Stevenson, Matt Hawkins, Vince Hernandez, Dwayne McDuffie, so many other people that have been kind enough to share their time with me and their creativity. And I've learned that working at it is the best possible thing to do. And am I telling the space opera, science fiction stuff ultimately that I may want to do, that some of my novels are based in, that I ultimately want to get to? Not all the time, but Stan Lee and Jack Kirby started when they were 40 something with Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I'm not. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So I will work at it, and I'll be diligent, and I'll be patient at it, and that lesson has carried me through a lot.
That's some awesome stuff. That's some stuff that we can all like reflect and kind of take in our lives. Another like, there's two more questions that like I think me and Mo both well, one's Mo's, and since he's not here, I'm gonna ask him for him, and another one is one that I came up and I've been asking people is for mine is, so what is something outside of comics? And I think you are, maybe Star Wars already covers it, but I was seeing if you have another one. Is another story that you like outside of comics that you really enjoy that kind of like inspired you or you would recommend to people?
You mean like a book or something they could
Uh,
buy, or?
just anything. It doesn't have to be. It could be a TV show, movie, book. Just something that like you think is like a something a well written story that you really enjoy, or story that's outside of comics. Just so like just to see how what other things that, because there's so many, we focus so much on comics and we don't realize that there's so many things, inspirations we can get outside of comics that we can bring back to comics. So I kind of like to see what else inspires people.
My favorite, my daughter recently asked me what my favorite book was, and I said Pattern Master by Octavia Butler, because it is at the same time a culmination of a series of books, because it is the last in her Patternist series of, I think that's 5 or 6 books. But even by itself, it tells a wholly engaging story, which is interesting because it's the one that she wrote almost first. She knew the end of the story far before she did the beginning of the story. And I really enjoy the detail, the small things that I read Pattern Master, and then I go back to Wild Seed, or I go back to Mind of My Mind, or I go back to Clay's Arc, or even the one book that she disavowed, Survivor, and I see, oh, these are all things that are actually in Pattern Master. Those clues are all there, and building that kind of a continuity, building that kind of a coherent shared universe is enormously attractive to me, both inside and outside of comics, because that's the most fertile of grounds for stories to be told. A place where everybody's working on the same rules, and those rules apply no matter how you and your personal experience are working. So yeah, Pattern Master is definitely a book that I try to read as often as I can. I don't get as much time as I used to, but I try to read it as often as I can.
Yeah. Oh god, I gotta give a try that, because one thing I want to like, what I love what you're talking about, that is you talked about earlier on your own works and stuff, is you have a plan that's set, and that's the big thing. As a reader, I really enjoy it, because you can usually tell as a reader, if you can tell at a certain point, you kind of tell if like when a writer didn't know they were going to go this long, or they didn't know where they're going. It's really interesting, because I've seen like a few comics that are really enjoyable, but they were supposed to be like 6-parters, and then you see that like something caught on, and they get like their comic, like their company says, hey, let's make this an ongoing, and
Mm-hmm.
something changes, and it's really cool to see. And I understand it, but it's cool to see which ones that were ready for it and they're able to like pick it up and keep going, and then you can see sometimes the ones that weren't ready and they're like, oh, we're
Mm-hmm.
going past this. all right, I guess then he fights this dude, and then he does this, and then he gains this power, I guess. And it's really something as a reader I appreciate when people when writers always, and you said it, is you have a plan, you know where you're
Mhm.
going. Because if you can't write a story if you don't know where you're going, then everything else just gets lost. Then you're just writing from issue to issue, and it's just whatever
Mhm.
random thing pops their head. So, really appreciate that. Um, the last question I was going to ask you is a question that Mo likes to ask. Is with all the a lot of things you're doing, you have your own characters, your own worlds and stuff you're building. Where do you see is there a specific one that you want to, or are there multiple ones that you are focusing, you want to flesh out, and where do you see they're going the next 10, 20 years? Because we have things we have all these different characters that we've seen how they've changed and explored. We've gone to see from Black, for example, one is Black Panther, gone from a character that was introduced to Fantastic Four to a
Mhm.
character that we're now seeing in the he went from a side character in a specific comic to now his own unique, his own blockbuster movie. So I just
Mhm.
want to see if there's a character or characters that you want to see go in that, and that kind of a way, go evolve and become a household name.
Well, there's absolutely no point that I would turn down a multi-million-dollar check.
Yeah.
But the character, as I said, with the work that I've done on Project Wildfire, I
Mhm.
know the entire story from the first day he got his powers until what ultimately happens at the end of his story,
Mhm.
and I know what happens right after that. My co-creator Quinn and I, we often we refer to everything that's happening in Project Wildfire as season one.
Mhm.
uh, and that to be able to tell that story, to see his growth as a hero through years and years, and the enormously crazy things that we're going to put him through, the things that he's going to see that would break a lesser man, that will forge him into a better hero, are very important for us. And it's ironic in that I'm most commonly called by most of my friends a super villain, that the development is so important to me. But I would definitely, I'd like to see a lot more people than myself wearing Project Wildfire shirts, and to be able to see my kids able to pick up Phase and Wildfire
Mhm.
figures in their local Targets.
Wow, that's awesome. And I, like I said, is I expect we will see that with how much work you put into it. And like I said, it's anything that you get in life, if you work for it, you're getting it. And you're doing it. And we're all amazed and here to see the adventure and be part of the ride.
Spirit
So
willing and the creeks don't rise, as they used to tell me.
So yeah, I just want to just go over it again. I forgot to talk about this at the beginning, but important for the listeners, if it's your first time. This is Hannibal. The important thing is we're doing these interviews specifically for this month because it's Black History Month, and we wanted to interview Black writers and artists and just comic book creators in general, because it's nice to see diversity is coming, and with so many things like Black Panther is representing such a big moment for it just comic book in general. So it's really cool to see how we talked about trailblazers earlier, and how Hannibal is another one that's just keeping it going, pushing us further. And that he's a type of person that's going to keep us pushing to do better and better things. So we're really just happy to be part of this and be able to see him and be able to talk to him and interview him. So for all the new listeners, that was just it was great to have you, Hannibal. We're just really happy to have you. We're really
Happy to be
appreciative.
here.
Me and Bree, and like said, Mo is already messaged us. He's sad that he wasn't able to hear it because he's already been like, "Oh my god, this is a super good one, isn't it?" It's like, "Oh no, this is super good." Like all of them have been great. And so it's really awesome to end it off again on another high note. So it was just really appreciated. I'm not as well rehearsed for this part, so because Mo does it usually, but there's a lot of I like I said, I think we're on iTunes. There's a few other places that we place the podcast, and Mo will make sure that gets all gone through. Mo will also make sure all of our recommendations, everything we've talked about, gets kind of posted, so we can just be able to go through all the works. He'll also have all Hannibal stuff linked because, like I said, there's so much that you're doing, man, that it's just really awesome to see, and we want to make sure everyone gets to see it and be able to explore it. So just wrapping it up, we again saying thank you for being on the show. Me and Bree have had a fantastic time. We appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. Yeah, catch up with me. Catch up with me around Comic Con.
Yeah, we
Around
would
Comic
love.
Con, I might have more fun things to tell you.
Yeah, we would love to talk to you and have you on again. Like I said, this is a first-time thing. But if you enjoy it, we're always welcome to have you on again. We really appreciate it. Bree, thank you for doing. I think this might be our last interview for this month. So hopefully you come back to help us out again. Me and Mo definitely appreciate it. So yeah, that is it, everyone. Thank you for listening. It has been a good time, and it's a good way to wrap up. So thank you again, guys. You guys have a good night.